Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, Latoya Mitchell. Good morning, Lady Barbara. Good morning, Lady Vanessa. So glad to see so many of you on for this morning. I'm thankful, I'm excited. I may not sound more excited than I am, but I am. I'm thankful because it's a new day, a new morning. Great is God's faithfulness towards us and his mercies everlasting. I know that I have people watching many times that don't ascribe to any faith belief, and that's okay. I'm of the mindset that God is big enough to convince people of who he is in his own good time. I'm going to always tell you about who I believe, and I'm going to always tell you about what God has done in me and through me. And I'm going to always encourage you to seek God for yourself like I did. So yeah, but it's really up to you. It's really your choice. And all I can tell you is loving God and seeking God and getting to know him has been one of the best choices of my life ever. Let me just emphasize the hashtag ever part. So good morning to everyone. Good morning, Lady Ravonda. Good morning to everybody who is with us for the first time. If you're with me for the first time, you can put some hearts on the screen. You can tell me where you're from. You can give me just a state. I don't want your city because, you know, we have stalkers out here. So I don't really ask people to put their city online. So I'm very thankful for today. Today is Monday Motivation. If you're with me for the first time on Daring Dialogues, we do cover different subject matters all throughout the week. Monday is motivation. Hopefully I will say something today that will inspire you, encourage you, get your week started, get you motivated. Tuesdays, we come and we talk Black history, Black history, and we don't apologize for it. Wednesdays, we talk about relationships. We're currently looking at the relationship that we have with ourselves in healing our childhood, some things that may have happened to us through our childhood, and myths and concepts that have become embedded within our minds that is affecting all of our other relationships in life. So that's one thing we're looking at on Wednesdays. Thursdays is Theology and Thinking Thursdays, and we are currently talking about the state of the quote-unquote church. And we're also talking about the history of church and church practices, so that people are aware of what it is they're serving, what it is they're participating in, what it is they're doing, and why. We like to emphasize the why, okay, on Daring Dialogues. And then Fridays, we end the week talking Healthy, Wealthy, Wise, or Finance Friday. So we try to give you a little bit of something to encourage you in your health practices, all right? Or we try to give you a little bit of some wealth building tips, especially if you are a business owner and an entrepreneur, all right? I will tell you that everything that we talk about with Healthy, Wealthy, Wise, I like to practice it myself. So I try not to give you any health practice tips that I myself am not doing or have tried. Okay? So let's start out today. I want to see if I can pull this up so you all can hear it. But it was something I ran into on yesterday. And gosh, my phone is doing all kinds of spooling here. So I'm trying to, excuse me, I'm trying to exit out of here so I can go back. And I want to share with you a post that I put on my page, my personal page, and it was about leadership. Some of you may have listened to it on yesterday if you are my personal Facebook friends, but I want to play this post because I think it is important for people to hear this. So it's called, hold on, let me make sure it doesn't start just yet. He is talking about, this gentleman, I believe his name is Wayne Cordeiro. He's talking about leadership. And I want you to pay attention to what he says about leadership. It's roughly about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes long. So I'm going to play it. Let me turn my volume up. I'm going to play it so you all can hear it. All right. You can put some hearts on the screen as you're listening. You can put some notes up here as you're listening, because we're going to talk about what he said, which was really incredibly amazing. Listen up, listen in.
We train leaders. And this time we brought up 22 leaders from the Hunan province, and they rode 13 hours on a train to get to a hotel that they came up 2 by 2 in these elevators so as to not draw any attention. And then they got to a hotel room, a little apartment room. It's only about 700 square feet in the little living room, no air conditioning, hardwood floor, 22 sat there. I came in, and when you teach in China, you start at 8 in the morning and you don't get done till 5 at night. You teach the whole day. They were sitting there, all 22 of them, and I looked around and I said, now, if we get caught, what will happen to me? They said, oh, you'll get deported in 24 hours and we'll go to prison for 3 years. I said, you're kidding. How many of you have been in prison for your faith? Out of 22, 18 raised their hands. I thought, no way. And I looked at him and I said, you 22 people, how many people do you oversee? Because they were all of these small group leaders, underground church leaders in the Hunan province. I said, how many, if you counted up all the people under your jurisdiction, how many would it be? And they counted them up, and they said, little over 20 million. I said, what? See, we forget there's 1.3 billion people in China. This is crazy. Well, I had 15 Bibles, and I passed them out. Obviously, 7 didn't get them. And I said, let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 1, and we're going to read it. Just then, one lady handed hers to somebody next to her. And I thought, interesting. Well, we turned there anyway, and as we started reading it, I understood why she gave it away. She had memorized the whole thing. She just recited the whole chapter. When it was done, I went over to her at a break, and I said, you recited the whole chapter. She says, oh yes, I've memorized many chapters. I said, where did you memorize many chapters? She said, in prison. I said, you have much time in prison. So I said, but don't they confiscate the Bible? She said, yes. So people bring in scriptures written on pieces of paper, and they bring it in. So I said, but then if they find that piece of paper on you, won't they confiscate that? She said, oh yes, that's why you memorize it as fast as you can. Because even though they can take the paper away, they can't take what's hidden in your heart. I thought, wow. Well, after 3 days, you fall in love with these people. And when it was done, I said, how can I pray for you? I'm going to go back to America, and you guys have been just so wonderful. How can I pray for you? They said, Wayne, you guys can gather like this whenever you want to in America. We can't. Could you pray that one day we'll be just like you? And I looked at him and I said, I will not do that. Big incredulous eyes looked at me and they said, why? I said, because you guys rode a train for 13 hours to get here. In my country, if you've got to drive more than an hour, people don't come. You sat on a wooden floor for 3 days. In my country, if people have to sit more than 40 minutes, they leave. You sat not only here for 3 days on a hard wooden floor, but you did it without air conditioning. In my country, if it's not padded pews and air conditioning, people don't often come back. In my country, we have an average of 2 Bibles per family. We don't read any of them. You hardly have any Bibles, and you memorize them from pieces of paper. I will not pray that we become like, you become like us, but I will pray that we become just like you.
Listen, I just want y'all to know that when I heard that, I said, for my own life, forget anybody else. I'm talking to the woman in the mirror. I said, for my own life, I need to step it up as a leader. All right? As a leader. Now, he was talking about leaders who were coming to meet in secret that drove 13 hours. Well, not drove, but took a train 13 hours, went up in elevator 2 by 2 so they would not be suspicious in a country that does not like underground church, that does not like church that's not government approved, to go sit in a hotel room for 3 days on the floor to be trained and equipped. And as he said, it was about 20 people who combined lead about 20 million people in the underground church in China. So my question that I had to pose to myself was, how bad do you want it? As a leader, how bad do you want training? How bad do you want equipping? How bad do you want to expand yourself as a leader? Are you willing to do that at the risk of death or prison? Because in their case, like they told him, he would be deported in 24 hours. They would get him out of the country. But they would wind up getting a 3-year sentence in prison for being caught in this underground church training. How bad do you want knowledge? How bad do you want self-improvement? How bad do you want to become a better leader? How bad do you want to seek Christ and his teachings for yourself? Because also, as the man pointed out, there weren't enough Bibles to go around. And one lady was able to pass her Bible to someone else and recite the word of God from memory. And as he said, she said, hey, I learned how to do this because there's plenty of time to do it in prison. So I looked at that and I thought to myself, man, I think it's very powerful that he said, we're not going to pray that you all become like America or like American Christians, but we're going to pray that we become more like you. What was he actually talking about? He was talking about a hunger and a thirst, a desire and a passion. And we really have to ask ourselves every single day, how bad do I want it? How bad do I hunger and thirst after righteousness? How bad or how much do I hunger and thirst after my purpose? Do I get up in the morning with a sense of purpose? Do I get up in the morning with a sense of urgency about my life, about sharing the word of God? And when I say sharing the word of God, I'm not just talking about pulling out a Bible and walking around everywhere and reading scriptures off and telling people they're going to hell. Although I have done that. I'm talking about exhibiting the characteristics of Christ in your life that make people want to say, what is it about you that's different? What is it about you that is shining from you? What is it about the energy surrounding you that's always peaceful, or that's always positive, or that's always hopeful? right? Some people describe spirit as energy. I'm okay with them describing it as energy because in the beginning, God said, let there be light, let there be energy, and there was energy to power the entire world. So if you recognize it as energy, it's okay. As long as you recognize that my energy is positive, as long as you recognize that the light that's emanating from me is a positive one. All right. So what is it about our life that is making us get up every morning with a sense of purpose? I can tell you that there was a period of time in my life where I was feeling so bad and so down about the things that were happening at the time that I did not want to get up in the morning. So I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to go to bed at night and close my eyes and say, God, just take me. I'm done. I don't want to see another day. I'm in too much pain. I'm in too much anguish about what's happening in my life and in my circumstances. I don't believe in taking myself out, but hey, God, if you decide, you want this to be my last night on earth, I'm okay with it. You don't have to wake me up in the morning. I've been there. I know what that feels like. The sense of desperation, the sense of despondency and depression, and thinking that your life is over and you're never, ever, ever going to recover from what it is that you are going through. And guess what? Not one time did the Lord follow my directions. I would wake up the next morning and I'd be like, man, I'm still here. All right, I guess I'll get up and try again. And so I went through a period of feeling that way. And I want to read you something that is going to take me to my next point before we get into our book read for today, which is Essentialism. My next point comes out of a book called Do One Thing Every Day That Centers You. It's a book of exercises and quotes. And I wrote something on my page I'm going to share with you in a minute. But as I was going through this book this morning, I flipped right onto a page that ties into what I'm about to share with you. So let me give you this quote. It is by Ferdinand Foch. Ferdinand Foch, F-O-C-H. He said this: the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. The most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. I immediately thought about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or for those who have a comical sense of humor, a bad Negro. And I immediately thought about something that the Lord shared with me yesterday. This too is on my page. This is a gift. This is a gift. You can type it in. It's called, if you type in Man on Fire or, if you type in Man on Fire in your gift search, you can pull this gift up. And it reminded me of what God shared with me last night as he and I were having our nice little internal conversation. And this image, after he said it to me, this image came to mind. This is the image of a soul on fire. I happen to agree with Mr. Ferdinand when he says one of the most powerful things in the world is a human soul on fire. And this is what the Lord shared with me. He said, all things God built arise from the ashes. All things that are God built arise from the ashes. Sometimes people attempt to set you on fire. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, today whose life has been left in shambles, and it hasn't really been any fault of their own. I find it very interesting that many people who have not gone through anything love to tell people what is their fault and what is not their fault. But when you have experienced someone coming along and setting your life on fire or setting you on fire with the intent to destroy your life, you will have a different response rather than just telling people that it's their fault, that they're going through whatever they're going through. So many of us have had people who have come along who have tried to set our life on fire for whatever reason. Maybe it was out of jealousy. Maybe it was out of just plain vindictiveness, whatever it is. Some people have been set up to fail. Some people have been sabotaged. I know this happens often in the workplace. Some people have been accused of things, right, that they did not do, like the Central Park 5, which has been in the news prominently. So sometimes people attempt to set you on fire, but they realize, like the burning bush, that you are burning on. You are not burning out, and you're not burning up. You are burning on. You might have been set on fire by someone else, but you're still going. You're still walking with God. You're still walking in your purpose. You're still accomplishing things that people said you would never accomplish. So you're burning on, not burning out, and not burning up. There is no smoke. There is no ash. There is no singe. Not even the smell of smoke many times. And when people recognize that that is the case, that is when the fear of God arrives. When people realize they did everything they could to destroy you, to bury you, and to write you off, and you are still standing, that's when the fear of God comes and people realize, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe this person really is doing the work of the Lord, or maybe I misjudged the person because literally they are being tried by fire, but they are being built by God. They're coming out of a thing on the other side, and God is with them. So I want to encourage some of you that may feel like this today. You might feel like your whole world has been set on fire. But here's the thing. If you are in God, and sometimes even if you're not in Him, sometimes God just has a plan for your life, and He will speak to you in the very thing that people try to use to destroy your life. Some of us actually wind up having an encounter with God that changes the entire situation for the better and for our good. So I want to encourage some of you who may be feeling like that. You may be feeling like your world has been set on fire. You may be feeling like someone is out to destroy you today. Someone is out to cause you to go through unnecessary trials. Understand that God can take whatever destructive thing they're trying to do, and He can make it work for your good. He really can. I'm not saying that because it's pop psychology. I'm not saying that because somebody is paying me to say it. I'm not saying that because I'm going to turn around and promise you $1 million if you believe this word. No, I'm saying it because I know that it is true. That's why I'm saying it. If you trust God through the trial that you're going through, I believe that God will show up on your behalf, and He will teach you to not only handle the fire that has been set, but He will teach you how to master it. He will teach you how to master it. He will teach you how to walk through and become your own fire. He will teach you how to be so on fire in your own life, in your own human soul, with your own purpose and your own passion, that people can literally be throwing more fire at you and it won't affect you because you are burning on. You're not burning out and you're not burning up, but you are set on fire with the purpose of God, and you're just walking through your process. And so, hey, somebody wants to throw a dart, they want to throw an arrow, guess what? It's going to be consumed because you're walking in your own fire. You are set on fire from the inside. Nobody can destroy this fire. So I encourage you to allow the fire of God to burn on the inside of you. Allow the passions of God to burn on the inside of you. Because as long as you are human and as long as you are alive, people are going to come and try to set you on fire. So this kind of fire here, the fire of your soul, the fire of your passion, the fire of your purpose, they can throw more fire, but all it's going to do is just fuel you and keep you going and cause you to continue to walk in your purpose. So you don't have to fear when you're walking in this kind of fire, the fire of God, the fire of the Holy Spirit. You don't have to fear what man can do to you. There were many stories. If you read, the book is called Fox's Book of Martyrs. There were many stories where people would come and they would do terrible things to people who believed in Christ. And many times they would set those people on fire. And some of them would still be praying. They would still be talking to God. They couldn't believe it. They're like, wait a minute. We're literally burning this person alive and they are unmoved. What was going on with that person? I would like to believe that they discovered that there was a fire greater than the one they were in. We'll say that again. They discovered that there was a fire greater than the one they were in, greater than the one they were going through, like the Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They too were thrown into a fire, and the people expected them to die. They didn't expect them to be, matter of fact, they were thrown into the fire bound. So not only did they want them to be thrown into the fire, but they wanted to make sure they couldn't escape. So they bound them first, hand and foot, and threw them into the fire. But what happened? They said, wait a minute. It looks like they're walking around loosed in the fire, and there appears to be a fourth man walking around in there with them. What in the smack dab is going on? There was a fire walker in there with them, and they were able to get out of that fire without being burned. I believe that God can do that for you today. I believe that whatever you are walking through, that if you learn to tap in to the fire on the inside, to the fire of God, the presence of God on the inside of you, that whatever you're walking through is not greater than the fire that's on the inside of you. Now, let me talk to you about essentialism. The disciplined pursuit of less. We have been talking about developing a filter in your life for the fascinating. And we're in chapter 6, and the chapter is called Look, See What Really Matters. In order to live a life that is a disciplined pursuit of less, we have to learn to actually look. We actually have to pay attention to our surroundings, and we have to begin to see what really matters and to filter for the fascinating. We said that we were going to talk about how do you filter for the fascinating? How do you start paying attention to what really matters? Let's talk about some practical ways you can do that. Number one, keep a journal. This one is something that I believe billionaires recommend, millionaires recommend, plain ordinary people recommend, counselors recommend, artists recommend, and it's probably one of the least used practices that are out there. And that is the simple habit of keeping a journal. Stating the obvious, the words journal and journalist come from the same root word. A journalist is, in the word's most literal sense, someone who writes a journal. Therefore, one of the most obvious and yet powerful ways to become the journalist of our own lives is simply to keep a journal. The sad reality is that we humans are forgetful creatures. I would even go so far as to say shockingly forgetful. Don't believe me? You can test this theory right now by trying to recall from memory what you ate for dinner 2 weeks ago on a Thursday. Or ask yourself what meetings you attended 3 weeks ago on Monday. If you are like most people, you will draw a total blank on this exercise. Think of a journal as like a storage device for backing up our brain's faulty hard drive. As someone once said to me, the faintest pencil is better than the strongest memory. For the last 10 years now, I have kept a journal using a counterintuitive yet effective method. One of the journals that I have kept, just as a sidebar here, one of the journals that I have kept is a journal called Miracle Moments. Those are times in my life when God has performed a personal miracle for me. All right? And so, again, as he said, the faintest pencil is better than the strongest memory. Sometimes we can forget all of the many things that God has done for us. Some people don't do a miracle journal. You might do a gratitude journal, right? Or you might do a milestone journal of important and significant things that have happened in your life. And you can go back and you can read and look at all of the ways that God has brought you through and be reminded that if he did it in the past, he can do it again. He says this, I have used a counterintuitive yet effective method in my journaling. It is simply this. I write less than I feel like writing. Typically, when people start to keep a journal, they write pages the first day. Then by the second day, the prospect of writing so much is actually daunting, and they procrastinate or they abandon the exercise. So apply the principle of less but better to your journals. Restrain yourself from writing more until daily journaling has become a habit. I also suggest that once every 90 days or so, you take an hour to actually read your journal entries from that period. But don't be overly focused on the details, like the budget meeting 3 weeks ago or the pasta dinner you had. Instead, focus on your broader patterns or trends. Capture the headline. Look for the lead in your day, your week, and your life. There's actually a really good journal out. I think it's called the Mood Journal. And in this particular journal, you actually chart how you're feeling every single day, and you actually color code it. And if you start charting enough, you'll actually start to see patterns in your moods. It's very good for people who are trying to chart their emotional health or their mental health. So he says small incremental changes are hard to see in the moment, but over time can have a huge cumulative effect. Second exercise, get out into the field. Jane Chen was one of a team of students in a D-School class called Design for Extreme Affordability. The class challenged them to design a baby incubator for 1% of the traditional cost. According to Jane, in the developing world, 4 million low birth weight children die within the first 28 days of life because they don't have enough fat to regulate their body temperature. If they had raced into this as simply a cost problem, they would have produced an inexpensive electric incubator, a seemingly reasonable solution, but one that, as it turned out, would have failed to address the root of the problem. Instead, they actually took the time to find out what really mattered. They went to Nepal to see the challenge firsthand. That's when they discovered that 80% of the babies that were being born at home, not in the hospital, were born in rural villages with no electricity. Thus, the team's real challenge, it seemed, became clear, and that was to create something that did not require electricity at all. With that key insight, they began in earnest to solve the problem at hand. Eventually, Jane and 3 other teammates launched a nonprofit company called Embrace and created the Embrace Nest, which uses a wax-like substance that is heated in water, then placed in the sleeping bag like pod, where it can warm a baby for 6 hours or more. By getting out there and actually fully exploring the problem, they were able to better clarify the question and in turn to focus on the essential detail that ultimately allowed them to make the highest contribution to the problem. Number 3, keep your eyes peeled for abnormal or unusual details. Remember in the telling of Moses' first encounter with God with the burning bush in Exodus 3, Moses' eyes were attuned to an abnormal or unusual detail. It was not unusual for a bush to be burning in the desert in the heat. It happened often. Bushes were always on fire because of how hot it was. The unusual detail that caused Moses to turn aside was the fact that the bush was on fire, but it was not burning up. Miriam Seaman is an award-winning journalist from Lebanon. She recently completed a John S. Knight Journalism Fellowship at Stanford University, where she specialized in media innovation and design thinking. I asked her to share the secret tip of her trade based on her years of experience capturing the real story amid all of the surface noise. Her reaction was encouraging. She said, finding the lead and spotting the essential information are skills that can be acquired. But she said, you need knowledge. Getting to the essence of a story takes a deep understanding of the topic, its context, its fit into the bigger picture, and its relationship to different fields. So, she would actually read all the related news and try to spot the one piece of information that everyone else had missed or had not focused enough on. My goal, she said, was to understand the spider web of the story because that is what allowed me to spot any abnormal or unusual detail or behavior that did not quite fit into the natural course of the story. It is crucial, Miriam says, to seek a different perspective on a given story, one that sheds the light on the topic in a fresh, different, or thought-provoking way. One trick she uses is role play. She puts herself in the shoes of all the main players in a story in order to better understand their motives, reasoning, and points of view. Case in point, we were having a conversation with one of my coaching group members, and she is on here today. And we were having a conversation about the Hebrews, or the children of Israel, and how it was that after all that God had done for them, they still did not believe. And we began to talk about the fact that these people had a pillar of cloud by day, which means they were getting cooled off in the daytime and not being beat with the sun. They had a pillar of fire by night, which means they were getting heated and not being frozen out in the desert in the cool, or in the mountains in the cool. So they had air conditioning during the day, they had heat at night, and then they were given Uber Eats, in my opinion. All right. When you said, what do you mean Uber Eats? Uber Eats didn't exist in the Old Testament. Yes, it did. They were getting fast food delivered. All right. Quail coming down out of the sky. Fried chicken. Call it what you want. They had Uber Eats in the wilderness. All right. Way out in the wilderness, God was dropping off food. And they had water that God allowed to be healed so that they could have something to drink. So they get AC that a lot of people complain about. They had air conditioning. They had heat at night. They had fast food, Uber Eats, delivered, dropped off, literally from heaven. And they had fresh drinking water. Yeah. And they still had something to complain about. Now, I hadn't seen that before, but as I began to talk about it, I thought about the fact that God was delivering a fast food system before we ever thought of it here in our modern day times. So that's one way of taking something that you've heard over and over and over again and keeping your eyes peeled for an abnormal or unusual detail and bringing it into the present. The fourth method here is clarify the question. So we have keep a journal, get out in the field, keep your eyes peeled for an unusual detail, and clarify the question. Anyone who has watched skilled politicians being interviewed knows how well trained they can be in not answering the question. Yeah. Evading hard questions can be tempting for us all. Often it's easier to give a vague blanket answer rather than to summon up the facts and information required to give a thoughtful, informed answer. Yet evasiveness only sends us down a non-essential spiral of further vagueness and misinformation. Clarifying the question is a way out of that cycle. Eli Cohen, Senior Vice President at Salesforce.com, was one member of a 6-person team crammed into a hot hotel room at the normally tranquil Cavallo Point. For the next 3 hours, they would compete against 5 other teams in a business simulation. The task involved answering a series of questions about how they would handle hypothetical management situations. At the timer ticked, Eli's team was having trouble getting started. Each proposed answer spawned still more opinions and comments, and soon what should have been a fairly straightforward problem-solving effort had devolved into a sprawling, undisciplined debate. I was there to observe and coach the team, and after 15 minutes of this, I had to ask the team to stop. "What question are you trying to answer?" I asked them. Everyone paused awkwardly. Nobody had a response. Then someone made a comment about something else, and again the group went off on a tangent. I stepped in and posed my question again and again. Eventually the team stopped and really thought about what goals they were trying to accomplish and what decisions really needed to be made. They stopped the side conversations. They waded through all the ideas and opinions that had been haphazardly thrown out, listening for the hidden theme and idea that connected them. Then finally, they moved from a state of motion sickness to momentum. They settled on a plan of action, made the necessary decisions, and divided up the responsibilities. Eli's team actually won the competition by a landslide. So, essentialism. In order to create a life of getting out the non-essentials, moving the stuff out of our life that we don't need to have, that aren't important, we have to begin to see what really matters. Again, we have to keep a journal. These are practical tips. Keep a journal. Begin to chart how you are seeing life. Get out into the field. That means get out and actually experience so that you can come up with a correct answer. Keep your eyes peeled for abnormal or unusual details and clarify the question. What problem are you actually trying to solve? What is your actual purpose? Do you know why you're here? Do you know what your essential purpose in life is? God clarified my essential purpose for me. He said, I have created you to be a mental abolitionist. So, my goal for you is to help people to get set free in their mental state, in their mind processes, in their way of thinking. I've given you several gifts and talents and skills and avenues by which you can do that. But the core of what I'm calling you to be, the core of what I'm calling you to do is to be a mental abolitionist. So again, I found the answer to what I'm supposed to be doing in life because I was able to clarify the question. What exactly am I supposed to be doing? What exactly am I here for? How are my skills tied in to my purpose? And I encourage everybody to clarify the question. Clarify the question in your life today. Why are you here? What is your primary goal? What is your primary purpose? And it was interesting because once God said that to me, a whole lot of other things began to click. Because one of the things that people always said to me was, you have a way of taking something that may be complex and breaking it down and simplifying it for people to understand. Or you have a way of showing people something that they have read all the time, right? That they did not see before. So that aligns with what God told me. But it's also something that people have been telling me all the time that I wasn't paying much attention to. So this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host, Shantae Charles. I hope that I have said something today that has inspired you. I hope I have said something today that has gotten you thinking about your life goals and your life purpose. I hope that the fire that's on the inside of you has been reignited and has been ignited further with the right things, with the positive on today. If you're going to join us in our conversation piece for Daring Dialogues, you can join us right now at pscp.tv/Life Nation. We're continuing the conversation over there. So if you want to participate in our live audience, you can join us there now. Take care. Thank you, Facebook viewers.